if there's progressive warning or written warning or even citation or criminal summons, like I want to be able to do that. So getting back into the subsection, why are we left with these wild cats in the city limits? And they believe that the cycle of life will eventually take its course versus having high euthanasia rates. But in the meantime, you have DOA, dead on arrival, dead cats being hit by vehicles. You have songbirds being killed. You have dogs barking at cats. You have zoonotic. You have feral cats mingling with domestics. So we need to really get a better handle on, I believe, the number of animals, which Ms. Martinez, you touched on that. So maybe under limits and restrictions of how many animals within the city limits, and cap it. And then animals running at large, don't tie my hands, but have maybe get involved and see how we can place some regulations on these groups that are working with the feral cats, so that we can come to a balance. So that we can better get a handle on it.
So I look forward to this coming back to us so we can break it down and go through it and see what we can do to better assist you and not tying your hands, etc. Councilor Peggy Sue Martinez, I saw your hand up.
I just want to say thank you to Officer Benavides. I really feel like this is important to our community, and it's one of those challenges that we got that we need to start working harder, and this is one of the ways that this committee can do something very positive for Espanola and safety and the well-being and quality of life of all our constituents. So like you, sir, I'm looking forward to the changes, and hopefully we can get this passed. One of the things that did come up is the trash is disallowing any animal that is dead on arrival to be delivered via the trash. So he's having a really difficult time dealing with it, because he's lining up getting stuck with the animal if it's dead, because currently the animal shelter doesn't have a crematory that's operational, and they are working on trying to get that fixed. And he's caught in a situation where, what do you do with a dead animal if he's picking up dead animals in neighborhoods so that kids can't touch them or don't touch them, and other animals don't come in contact with this dead animal? He needs somewhere to dispose of this. So this is almost an emergency situation in my view. So just something that I would be remiss if I didn't mention, that I feel like you're in a bad situation with dealing with that and not having an opportunity to dispose of an animal like that. So I don't know, I'd like to hear from John Ritchie, being that he's on the board at North Central, and see if there's anything they could do, even if it's temporary until the shelter gets their crematory running, or see if there's some way that we can work something out where he has an opportunity to dispose of an animal safely and properly. Thank you.
Councilor Ritchie.
Thank you. Regarding disposing of animals in a trash area, I'm not sure. We'd have to look and see if what codes require or what's allowed. I didn't know our crematory was down. That's what I thought we would be using as our crematory. So that's the only concern I have. How long has the crematory been down?
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I know that it's been an issue. They're supposed to be having somebody come look at it yesterday or today and get some type of an estimate as to what it's going to take to bring that back up.
Do we know what's wrong with it?
No.
Actually, I don't. I just know that assuming
Not that I'm a professional with crematories or anything, but
right. Assuming that, let's just say
But I am.
I respond to, I use a term of art in animal control, like fresh kill. Like, let's just say dog cat gets hit by vehicle, assuming that I can pick it up safely if it's light enough. What I usually do is double bag, and assuming that their freezer is available, like enough room for me to place, then from there, it's their deal. So I don't have anything to do with their crematory. That was kind of new to me. what I'm requesting really is something with North Central. This way we could have a resource. The other thing would be is to have another freezer specific for me. Now, there's been times, and city has been great, like I've had to utilize city streets to come with a front-end loader to help me with an extra large breed dog that had been sitting for over the weekend for 3 days. So very heavy, decomposed, that type of thing. So to do it safely and healthily, right? I'm having to utilize other resources, which they've been a big help. But then what do I do with it? I can't go up 31 Mile and go illegal dump, or I can't place a skunk inside of a dumpster. There's been times where I've had to bury, on site, and I don't like doing that either. So I'm really, asking for some assistance with combination of North Central. This way I can beeline over there, I can take care of it right away. I was explaining to Ms. Martinez that, and respectfully, I don't like to keep on going back to Albuquerque, but we had 2 DOA drivers, big city, working 10-hour shifts, and they were picking up deceased animals all day long, even owner surrenders. But they had the landfill, city ran shelter, city dump, a hole dug, 2 drivers go and unload, and it's done. Whereas here, I pick up an animal. I mean, if that freezer is full at the shelter and their crematory is down, if I don't have any other resource, and people call, and they get frustrated, they get upset, and not everybody can bury their own animal. So.
Thank you. Councilor Peggy Sue Martinez, I saw your hand up.
I don't have anything to add. I think we're going a little bit far on this, but
Yeah.
I do think it's important that we do touch base on these types of issues, and that's why I think it's important that we have the visit from Mr. Bates and from Mr. Gregg. And I feel like it's important that you and that we can figure out the little details of how we're not able to do certain things, and maybe we can help each other out, and maybe they can help us out with this situation. And definitely we need to see about that crematory and get that up and running as soon as possible.
One more thing, just one more thing. I very much get a whole lot of support from Deputy Chief, the police department, all my fellow employees. And so anyway, I believe this is possibly like the second go-round, and this is with regard to being able to use North Central. So I believe that there has been emails already sent. Maybe originally we were denied, but either way, that would be really big.
So, and that'd be great. So we can just direct that portion of it, because that seems more like an administrative issue to your chain of command, city manager, and therefore Councilor Ritchie does sit on that board as well. So then therefore, again, that's more administrative than anything, than more action from the governing body. But I don't want to continue this conversation, because this is going to come back to us again, and I'm sure we'll get into it in depth. So thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda, and city attorney is with us, correct, on Zoom. Mr. Jonas, can you unmute?
Yes. Good evening, Chairman Torres.
Good evening. Thank you. All righty. Next item on our agenda is the recommendation to amend Section 23-5 and 23-6 of the City Code regarding municipal judge, presented by our city attorney, Jonas Nejo. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, and good evening to the Public Safety Committee, Chairman Torres, and fellow city councilors. So before you tonight is a ordinance that is going to amend the qualifications and salary that the current city code requires in the city. And of course, as you remember, this was an item that came before full council at the last meeting. But the form of the ordinance that was presented to council just contained a lot of options, and that wasn't the intent. We feel like it would have been more efficient to recommend a specific qualification or a specific salary, and then have the city council debate and decide whether the recommendation from the Public Safety Committee meets the approval of the council, or whether some amendments would be necessary. So this version of the ordinance removes all of the options, and in discussions with the mayor, we developed one addition. I'll start with the qualifications. And just as a starting point, because I know that this was in the council's mind at the meeting, the city council is authorized to set forth the qualifications of municipal judges and the salary that they shall receive by ordinance of the municipality. So there's no question that the council and the city has authority to set the qualifications and the salary. So let's take a look at the qualifications that you recommend adoption to the council. So the first is that the municipal judge must be a citizen of the United States. That's currently in your ordinance. Shall be a resident of the state and a qualified elector therein. That's also currently in your ordinance. And what's meant by qualified elector is that the person is eligible and registered to vote. Now that, of course, may create an issue for anyone that's been convicted of a felony, but there are ways in the state to reinstate a felon's right to vote. So any candidate for municipal judge office, if they had been convicted of a felony, still needs to show that they are a qualified elector and that they have gone through the process to reestablish their right to vote in the state. The third requirement is that the municipal judge shall be a resident of the city. And lastly, this was the new addition, that the municipal judge shall have obtained a minimum of 60 credit hours applicable toward a 2-year or 4-year degree at a college or university. That additional qualification we present, in connection with recommendations from the mayor. And it's my understanding that 60 credit hours is generally 2 years of college or university. And the method by which a candidate would have to prove that they meet these qualifications is just by signing a sworn declaration with the city clerk that they do meet the qualifications. So they don't actually have to produce a transcript or anything like that is then reviewed by the city clerk. They just need to swear under penalty of perjury that they meet these qualifications. And then as to the salary, the current salary that Espanola is paying its municipal judge is linked to the salary that state magistrate judges are paid. So the current salary is $98,637. And as was discussed at the council meeting, and as we've talked about with city administration, that salary is and I will tell you how we came up with that. I looked around the state at various municipalities, and I will tell you that Espanola was paying its municipal judge basically the most that I could see. I looked at, I looked at Taos, Alamogordo, Belen, Hobbs, Rio Rancho, Los Alamos, and the average of and I understand that some of those municipalities don't have the same population of Espanola, but I was just trying to get a general sense of what the salaries of municipal judges are. The average of those 6 municipalities was around 60,000. But because we're talking about requiring at least 2 years of college credit, I added another 10,000 to make it up to 70,000. And I was kind of comforted by the fact that Los Alamos pays its municipal judge 75,000 in a city with 12,660 people. And Espanola is slightly smaller, but at the same time, it's a neighboring community with roughly the same population. And so I thought that 70,000 seemed like a reasonable number to settle on. Now, of course, the committee is welcome to change these numbers or change the qualifications in their recommendation to the council. And of course, the council is free to make amendments to the recommended ordinance. And so with that, I will stand for any questions.
Alrighty, I'll go ahead and start off. So I do see, and I do know that Honorable Martinez made a suggestion the last city council meeting to this, and you have the verbiage shall have obtained a minimum, so you added the verbiage of minimum to the 60 credit hours applicable towards a 2-year or 4-year degree. So I see that, that's already there.
Yes, correct.
I have a question. So this is obviously dumbed down way more than what we had presented before us the last time.
Yes.
I do not see anywhere on the temporary judge portion of this. So what happened to that?
Sure. That's a good question. I forgot to mention that. So really what happened there is that the current city code is sufficient. And amending it is really not necessary. The current city code has that the municipal judge, in advance of an event that they know will not remove them from office, but temporarily remove them from office, they can appoint a temporary municipal judge to serve in their absence. And that's the way the current ordinance reads. If they have failed to appoint a temporary judge, then the city council appoints that temporary judge. And then by statute, only the city council can appoint an interim municipal judge, which is a judge that is appointed when the elected municipal judge is not just temporarily gone from his office, but he is permanently gone for his office, and that judge is appointed up to the next municipal election. So the way the city code stood at the time was fine. I presented options in that revision that the committee had last time. I presented the option that the temporary municipal judge could be chosen by the mayor with the advice and consent of the council. I just had, and this option was also there. The current city code was also there. But I didn't really perceive that there was a need to change that part of the ordinance. And I really didn't hear from the mayor or some of the administration that I spoke with that was really something that was necessary to change. I think that when the former municipal judge left office, we just had an issue because we had people who were in jail and there was no municipal judge on the bench to do anything about that. And we had to scramble quickly. But there's really nothing we can do about that because only the city council can appoint that interim judge in that situation. And so we were looking for a way to find a fix in that situation. And really the state statutes kind of leave municipalities in a bind. Because if there is a sudden removal of the judge, which is what happened in Española, you have to convene, the city council and get everything together quickly because you do have defendants, awaiting trial. But there's nothing we can do about that because that is set forth by state statute, and the council can't create a process for that by ordinance. So because I really didn't see it necessary to change the ordinance, I removed all of the temporary municipal judge and interim municipal judge options from this form of ordinance that's in front of you now.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, sir. I'm going to go ahead and chime in again, and then councilors, I will yield the floor to you for your questions, comments, or concerns or edits regarding what's presented before us. I was okay the last presentation with the salary ranging, and it had bullet points from 55 all the way to 85,000, of course, with the minimum qualifications of a high school diploma, 2-year degree, 4-year degree, and a master's. I was okay with that. I would ask that we bring that back to the table and add that to these duties and compensation, because God forbid that we have standards and ask for qualifications to run a budget of $700,000, because that's approximately what the municipal court's budget is. I will leave it at that. Counselors, I will yield to you all for your comments, questions, concerns, and edits that you would have to this presented before us. Counselor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the proposed amendment now, just because it simplifies it. It has a salary, to me, that works with, as you said, the budget that the court has to be responsible for, and it is putting in the qualification of the school, college credits, at least minimum 2 years. I think that justifies the 70,000, and no sense of starting in low and work, just, if we're bringing somebody in with the qualifications of 2-year college, then 70 is a solid starting point for them.
So, and if I may ask, and Counselor Manny Martinez, again, I don't have video, so I cannot see if you have your hand up, so just chime in if you have anything to say, but correct me if I'm wrong, Jonas, because the last city council meeting, somebody stated that a minimum of 60 credit hours would be 60 and below, was my understanding, but if I'm reading it correctly, it would be you have to have a minimum of 60 plus, correct?
Correct. I think a minimum of 60, I see what you're saying. No, I think a minimum of 60 would include 60.
Would
Is that what you're
include
saying?
60.
Yeah, minimum of 60. So you have to have 60 plus. Is that what you're saying? 60?
Yeah, that was
And then
my,
anything above. Yep. Then I would agree with you.
okay. Counselor Manny Martinez, I'll yield the floor to you, sir, just because I can't see you or know if you've got your hand up or not.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, Chairman. I just want to say I do agree with the change, but I also I see with the minimum with the pay of 70, I do think that we should continue to have that small tier section, because we're looking at 70,000 for someone that does come in with a minimum of 60 credit hours. But if we do have a candidate or that is with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, I think that we should look at what that compensation would be. That way we would also possibly attract that part of a candidate that would want to run for judge. I think if you already have someone that's with a master's degree and looking at 70,000, they may not consider running, because based on the salary itself, sir.
Thank you, sir, and I'll chime in. You know, we are a small municipality, and our budget is very strained right now, so I'll go ahead and pause right there. Councilors, any other questions, comments, concerns? Councilor Peggy Sue Martinez.
Thank you, Chairman Torres. These questions are mostly for the attorney. So the first question I have is, the city council, based on the charter, does have the power to institute minimum qualifications for an elected position. So I just want to make sure and put that on record. Mr. Jonas.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Martinez. That is correct. The city council is authorized by state statute to set the qualifications of its municipal judges.
Okay, so the next question I have is concerning the timing of the elections being so near and possibly limiting the candidates running for municipal judge with the passage of this ordinance. Could this be considered arbitrary and capricious?
Thank you, Councilor Martinez. No, I don't think that it would be considered arbitrary and capricious. This certainly is not targeting any particular candidate. And also, it's my understanding that the time to declare candidacy is not until early January, I think the first week of January. So there really should not be any candidates that have been declared at this point. And so, I don't see any problem with this ordinance being passed and taking effect prior to the time that candidates are required to declare.
Thank you. I have one more question that I had written down. Hold on a second.
Sure, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I put them in my notes and text them to myself.
No worries.
Don't
Take
forget.
your time.
I had to look this up because I had these prepared for the last meeting, and then it got pushed back this week.
No worries.
I have to look them up.
May I chime in while she's looking for her notes?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I have a question. As far as with our current judge, I know that we discussed whether this would affect him and it wouldn't affect anything until the next election. But should our current judge decide to run and should win that election, would this affect him, or would he be basically grandfathered in where he's at right now, since he is the current sitting judge?
So it
Uh,
would
th-
affect, and Jonas, you can chime in, but it would take effect after the March 2022 regular municipal election, so therefore, there would be no grandfathering in. Jonas, go ahead and take over, sir.
No, that's correct, Counselor Torres. That is correct.
So clarifying, it would affect whoever is elected in the next election, no matter what, correct? Nobody is grandfathered at a certain salary, in other words.
That is correct, Counselor Martinez. Yes.
So the city of Espanola is not discriminating or infringing on any rights here.
No,
Okay.
no, Counselor.
All right.
Not at all.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
If I may, Chair,
Yes, sir.
I think with that being said, I think we should have a tier based on education and experience, with a minimum starting point at the 70,000 based on a minimum 60 credit hours, like was put in the previous uh, ordinance. That's my thought, sir.
So your recommendation, sir, so if we go back to the ordinance that was presented before us for edit, so we would rid the bullet point of 55,000 for minimum qualifications of a high school diploma or equivalent, because now we are asking for a minimum of 60 credit hours, which would be the mean, and then your master's would be 85. Is that what you're proposing?
Correct. Or also, as far as years of experience, you may have a person that may have a bachelor's degree, but may have already worked 10 years, either in law enforcement or with the courts, that may have that experience already coming with them.
Okay, and I think as we see it correctly, and I'm not sure, counselors, if you have the old ordinance that was presented last city council meeting, but it does state here, let me see, it says, and/or a minimum of 4 years' experience in the criminal justice system or related field.
If you're gonna have that on the bachelor portion of this, then that should also be on the associate
Correct.
portion of it. There has to be, if you're gonna allow for experience, and I do believe that it should be allowed, and life experience should also be allowed in this situation, so if that's part of the description and the job description for the bachelor portion, then I think you have to have something that's parallel.
Sure, no, absolutely. I was just reading the verbiage that counselor was asking for, and it is on two of them. However, it is not on the 2-year degree or minimum of 60 credit hours from the last one. So would you want to add that, sir? And, again, counselors, at any moment, you're welcome to make a motion with whatever.
I'll make the motion, sir. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion accepting the attorney's recommendation for a minimum of 60 hours and beginning the salary schedule at $70,000 with a tiered system. The one that was presented at our last meeting, omitting the first level,
Sure, of 55,000.
and accepting life experience or experience in criminal justice. The 4-year degree is a 4 years experience,
Correct.
and making the 2-year degree 2 years experience.
Okay.
Is it and/or, or is it?
And/or.
And/or? So I would say and/or 2 years experience on
On each tier.
each tier, yes.
Okay.
So the master being 6, the bachelor being 4, and the associate degree being
Two.
2-year experience,
So two,
correct?
4, 6, okay? Um,
Can I ask a question for Counselor Martinez
Sure,
on this motion?
sure. I can withdraw
You
the
said
motion
light.
and you can do it if you want, Manny. I don't have an issue with that.
No, no, I was, my question was just on life experience, versus experience within a, criminology field. So I just wanted to see what the,
I, I have, I have no issue if you want to provide an amendment. That's fine with me if you want to do that, or,
So Counselor, am I hearing your amendment be or related field? So criminal justice
that-
system or related field, instead of using the verbiage
Cor-
life?
okay,
Correct.
I'll accept the amendment, sir. Criminal justice or related field?
yes.
So now I do have a question. So we have a motion, but I do not have a second.
I will second it, sir.
Okay, thank you. Now, the makers of the motion, we have spoken about the 2-year degree or 60 credit hours minimum or 2 years experience for the first tier, and we've spoken about the top tier of a master's degree or 6 years minimum experience in the criminal justice system or related field. But we have yet to speak of the middle tier, which would be the 4-year degree and or a minimum of 4 years experience in the criminal justice system or related field. What would that, so bottom salary is 70,000, top salary is 85,000.
Can you repeat that again, sir?
So for Counselor Manny Martinez, on the 2-year degree or 60 credit hours, the salary would be 70,000. Then we spoke about the top tier for a master's and or a 6-year experience in the criminal justice system or related field. That is 85,000. We had yet to speak of the 4-year degree, et cetera, for that middle bullet. And Counselor Peggy Sue just did the math, and that would come out to 77,500.
Okay.
So, as you being the seconded, I'm sorry?
Is everybody okay with that figure?
So, and that's what, so Counselor Manny Martinez, if that's your amendment to your motion for that middle tier?
I'm just telling you, that's what the middle tier is. I'm open to suggestions.
Counselor Ritchie, Counselor Manny?
Um, I'm thinking, sorry, sir.
No, no problem, take your time.
You feel like it should be lowered? 70,000 all the way across?
70 as the first tier, 77 as a second tier, and 85 as the third tier. Is that correct? If we went with
So
that?
Counselor Manny Martinez, a point of clarification for you, Sir Ritchie, is Counselor Manny Martinez stated that if, should somebody come in with a master's degree, and come in basically over experienced, he wanted to compensate accordingly.
The whole reason we were looking at this was our budget in general. And the thing is, if you're setting it up, you know what you're going, I know it limits who would want to put their hat in the ring if they're going after salary, but if they're going after the purpose of serving the community, just like us as counselors, we didn't come into this for the pay and benefits. We came in to serve the community. And so we're giving them, because it is considered a full-time position, there is a salary and there is a minimum requirements because of what we're asking of them to accomplish. So that's why I recommend we just go with what was presented by the attorney.
Okay. Counselors,
One.
counselors of the motion,
I'd like to hear your feedback, Justin, on what you feel about this salary schedule. If you feel like it needs to be tiered, or you feel like it doesn't need to be tiered, do you feel like,
Sure. So, at the beginning, again, I misunderstood because the last go round when this was presented before us, it was stated, to add the verbiage of minimum, meaning 60 and under. But now that Jonas has made clarification, and the way I read it was 60 plus. I am okay without a salary schedule. Yes, it does hinder candidates that may be overqualified to come in. However, I will have to concur with Councilor Ritchie. So I will give my opinion. Again, you guys have the power of the motion. I am okay with just the 70,000 as presented on this.
I'll include that in my motion to just leave it at 70,000 across the board.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do this for purposes of clarification. Councilor Manny Martinez, Councilor Peggy Sue Martinez, because we've spoken a lot, if you'll just withdraw your motions and remake your motion just to approve it as is.
Okay, I'll formally withdraw my motion.
Councilor Manny Martinez?
I withdraw my second motion, sir.
Thank you. Now, councilors, before you is the ordinance and the presented before you with the qualifications being shall have obtained a minimum of 60 credit hours applicable towards a 2 or 4 year degree at a college or university, as well as with the duties and compensation, the municipal judge shall devote his or her full time to the duties of the office and shall not have other employment or occupation in conflict herewith. Beginning when the municipal judge takes office in the year 2022, the salary for municipal judge shall be $70,000.
So, we're not discussing criminal justice or related field or years of that at all?
So now we can add, if you want, shall obtain a minimum of 60 hours. So that's obviously for the 2 years. So you can add 2 years experience in the criminal justice system or related field, just to that line item of D, and that would suffice for everything else. So under letter D, it would state, and again, this is all just for purposes of clarity, shall have attained a minimum of 60 credit hours applicable towards a 2 or 4 year degree at a college or university, and or 2 years or more experience, or you can say a minimum, of 2 years experience. Okay, everybody clear on that? So councilors, the floor is open for motions to entertain.
A motion to approve and move to full council, sir, with the added verbiage of shall have obtained a minimum of 60 credit hours applicable towards a 2 year degree or 4 year degree at a college or university, or
And or.
a minimum and or a minimum of 2 years experience in the criminal justice system or related field.
Okay. We have a motion?
Second.
Alrighty, we have a motion from Councilor Manny Martinez and a second from Councilor John Ritchie. Councilors, do you have any questions regarding the clarity of the verbiage and this ordinance that is before us to move on to full council? Councilor Peggy Sue Martinez.
Thank you. For clarification purposes only, the salary schedule is set at $70,000 for the position, correct?
Correct.
No other questions, thank you.
Council-
Question from city manager.
Excuse me, City Manager?
Yes, Mr. Chair, so just to clarify and, for my own personal clarification. So, the additional verbiage that you want to consider to this would, 2 years experience in the judicial, system. So that doesn't require they must have the 60 credit hours, because you're saying or 2 years experience. So, if somebody comes in, well, they have 2 years experience with the criminal justice system, by what I'm understanding, it does not require them to have the 60 credit hours.
Right, okay.
Is that clarification? Is that what I'm gathering?
Councilors, is that how you would like this to be, or would you like it to be a minimum of 60 credit hours and?
Well, you can't do, you either, it's and or.
So, Jonas, if you're with us, sir, what would your,
Yes, I don't know if that's the intention of the committee. I think the and/or makes it so that they either have 2 years or 60 credits, or they have 2 years of experience in the criminal justice field. So I think the city manager is correct that they don't, if they have those 2 years of experience in criminal justice, they do not need the 60 credits.
great, thank you. Counselor Manny Martinez, since you're the maker of the motion. Counselor Ritchie, since you're the seconder. Counselor Ritchie has his hand up, sir.
Jonas, should we be specific in the criminal field or in the justice field of what the experience is? I'm just asking.
Yes, and I think that's a good point, Counselor Ritchie. I think that there could be a little bit, more detail in there, because I just, in practice, I'm a little concerned when the city clerk gets a candidate that comes in and says, okay, I want to declare candidacy for municipal judge. And then he or she explains, I don't have college, but here's my criminal justice. It's going to really be up to the city clerk at that point as to whether to consider that experience in the criminal justice or the related field.
So we do need to give her specifics.
Yeah, and this was a detail that we ran into this issue when we were sort of drafting it, is that it's pretty hard to apply for the city clerk without some very specific requirements. Now, I suppose you could identify perhaps the positions or the employment that you have in mind when you say criminal justice field. I mean, maybe you're talking about, within the police department, within the, jail system, maybe identifying what sort of employment experience that person needs to have in order to have criminal justice experience.
So, counselors, I would ask that we dissect that and make it crystal clear, because I do not want to be embarrassed again going before the governing body and having this come back to committee, because that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to iron out these details here. So, counselors, the makers of the motion, your thoughts and your suggestions, and then Counselor Peggy Sue Martinez, you have your hand up, ma'am?
Well, my thoughts are that being a judge, there's many things that could prepare you to be a judge. One of them is something that CM just mentioned, that you could have a paralegal that is not really in the criminal justice area, but understands the law and how to interpret the law. So I think that's something. You could have somebody that has just different types of job experience that creates a sort of a little bit of experience toward being a judge in this situation. So I understand what you're saying about making it a little bit more specific, but at the same time, I don't know how specific you want to get. I mean, I think criminal justice or related field, I think that sort of
Again, we're putting it on the city clerk, so we've got to help her out or help the clerk out and give them some parameters so they again,
When they're presented with credentials.
Counselor Ritchie, create some parameters for us. Tell me what verbiage.
So the makers of the motion, I would ask that you create parameters.
We'll throw out the, or we pull it. That is, because it is judgmental. And we just pull that. And
Counselor Manny?
or I have court, 2 years in the court system, working in the court system, from a clerk, minimum of a clerk, up.
I agree with Councilor Martinez. There's different applications in life that can prepare you to be a judge. I just feel that this is also a very important position. I know it's opened as an elected official, but it's a very important position that makes decisions for, or what their decisions are affects
So,
people on a very personal basis. I know with the council, the city council, there's many of us, so it takes more than one person to make that decision. In this case, it's just one person. But I do understand what Councilor Ritchie is saying, how it can be judgmental or be open to discussion as to what is considered experience in that field. It could be anywhere from an attorney, all the way to a clerk or police officer, and we could go into the specifics, and that could make this a mile long.
I feel like
Uh,
the more specific we are, the easier it'll be on the clerk, Council Martinez. Like, I feel like if you just throw out a few things as far as experience as a police officer, 911, attorney, somebody who has worked in the court system, those types of related things to the criminal justice system, I feel like if you want to
it
create
give a, ni-
parameters, then put them out there.
it would
Let's
give a nice overview for her to know
Yeah,
what we're
exactly. Like, if
talking
that's what
about.
you want to do, then I feel like it's important for her to know what the intent of the governing body was.
Question for the attorney. Uh,
Yes.
as you stated, we wouldn't be asking, or we wouldn't be, or the person wishing to run for judge wouldn't be asked to provide their college transcripts for the minimum of, of their time. Would it be also the same then for their uh, experience as well?
That's a good point, Councilor Martinez. I hadn't thought about this particular qualification, um, but I suppose they could sign also the sworn declaration stating that they have the criminal justice experience. But I also think it may be even vague for them to know whether they can attest to that if there's no real detailed definition of what criminal justice uh, experience is. I mean, even someone who perhaps has been working, at a halfway house or something like that, may think that they have criminal justice experience and they could sign the form saying they do. But if another candidate thinks that that isn't, then you could have a complaint filed by one candidate against another, and there aren't really great standards to apply to decide whether the person was really being honest in their sworn declaration that they had that experience. I think this conversation that the committee is having is part of the reason why we found it difficult to define what was criminal justice experience.
So, so then would you recommend if this committee is wanting parameters that they state in, excuse me, the criminal justice system, police officer, attorney, et cetera?
If if I may, Chair,
Councilor Manny Martinez?
I think at this junction, I'd like to just after with just speaking to what or what our attorney stated, I think I would like to retract my motion and just leave it as written there, uh, with shall obtain a minimum of 60 credit hours applicable towards a 2-year or 4-year degree at a college or university, and leave out the portion of experience, because I think that does open a lot of, like he says, a can of worms that some people may feel they have that experience depending on what their job is or what they feel it might be, and it could start something that we may not be wanting to open, sir.
Councilor Ritchie was the seconder of the motion?
I,
So they need to withdraw their,
So, correct. And I was just going to say, councilors, if you wouldn't mind withdrawing your motions, and,
I withdraw my motion, sir.
I withdraw. Second.
all righty, councilors, let's go ahead and start again.
Do it again.
So before us is, we have the City of Espanola Ordinance 2021-06. And let me get my which is a recommendation to amend sections 23-5 and 23-6 of the Espanola City Code regarding municipal judge, presented, of course, by our city attorney. So we are moving forward with the ordinance as presented, correct?
Motion to take,
Could you scroll up a little bit so we could read the whole thing, please? Stop. Go down.
I motion to move to take to full council approval sections 23-5 and 23-6 of the city code regarding municipal judge as written.
Thank you, sir.
Second?
All righty, looks like we've got ourselves a motion and a second. Councilors, any discussion regarding this motion?
Under discussion, I just want to say that I appreciate Jonas retracting the part on the temporary and the replacement judge. I really feel like Judge Martinez is a sitting, living example of how well that worked out for the city and for the constituents to have Mr. Martinez serving as our replacement judge. And we certainly appreciate what he's doing for us. So I would just state that maybe when we do the nominations for the appointed positions, that the judge at that point bring forth the names of the temporary people that he wishes to name as temporary, so that if there's a need for that, we all know who's going to be sitting in the seat if he happens to be gone. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Councilor Manny Martinez and Councilor Ritchie, any questions, comments, concerns regarding this motion?
No, sir.
No, sir, I just also want to thank the attorney for clarifying this. Just listening to what he's had to say, I can tell you it's very informative. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
All righty, if we may take a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Peggy Sue Martinez,
In favor.
Counselor Manuel J. Martinez,
In favor?
Counselor John Ritchie,
In favor.
Committee Chair Justin Salazar Torres.
In favor. Motion passes, and this will be going to full council. We will then direct the city clerk's department and our city manager to go ahead and start advertising this again, because it does need to be re-advertised, if I'm not mistaken, correct? For our public hearing to be determined. Thank you, sir. Alrighty, Jonas, please do not log off. We have one more item that we need a little bit of clarity
Okay.
on, and we're gonna move back to item E. This is a discussion item of repealing prior City of Espanola Ordinance 2019-07 and 2019-08 that was adopted on November the 12th of 2019 during the regular city council meeting by reference. This is an ordinance adopting the New Mexico Uniform Traffic Ordinance by reference, the 2010 compilation of the New Mexico Uniform Traffic Ordinances, establishing a penalty assessment program, defining penalty assessment, misdemeanors, establishing listed schedule of penalty assessments, and repealing all ordinance or parts of ordinance in conflict thereof, presented by the Honorable Judge Martin Martinez. So Honorable Judge Martinez already presented the question that was at hand, and if you give me just 1 second, it states here that he presented the New Mexico Uniform Traffic Ordinance 2010 compilation with all revision, 1978, Section 3-17-6. So my question, Jonas, was, are we permitted, or is it wise to allow all future revisions just automatically take precedence? Or would it be wise to set a date to say revisit this every 4 years, or 2 years, et cetera?
Yes, I think my recommendation would be to keep the language as is, because what that's saying is that as the state prepares revisions, and those revisions are probably going to be based on municipal league proposals or recommendations to a uniform traffic ordinance, or other groups that have input into these sorts of laws, and whatever that law says, of course, that would be what is in the ordinance of the city. And I think that if your municipal judge or your chief of police or other city administration is seeing an issue with a revision, they can bring that to your attention. I don't know if you're going to want to have to decide on, I think the alternative would be to decide on each revision to the state statute before you make that law in Espanola. And I just be concerned with the amount of revisions that could possibly happen. And I think you're just sort of leaving it to create a lot of work for the council if it's not an automatic inclusion in your own city ordinance, or rather than that, you have to go back and actually approve each revision as they come forward. And I think that may be just labor intensive for the council. And I think if there are issues, as I said, with revisions, city administration can bring that to your attention.
Perfect, great. Counselors, questions, comments, concerns regarding this now that we have Jonas on the line?
I do have a question. Mr.
Counselor Peggy Sue?
Thank you. So the question I have is repealing the City of Espanola Ordinance 2019-07 and 2019-08, adopted on November 12, 2019, because of a lack of codification by the city. So my question to you is, if the city council is adopting ordinances, then there's an absolute responsibility by the same entity, being the City of Espanola, to put what the actions of the governing body are into the codified book. And I have a lot of heartburn with sitting back here and looking at this November 12, 2019, and hearing that it was never codified or it's never been in the book, when this governing body that currently sits is the governing body that adopted this and passed it. So to me, it almost makes me worry that are we sitting here in vain, and are we just twiddling our thumbs and wasting everybody's time if we're not following through with what we're supposed to be doing once the governing body has taken action?
Thank you. City Attorney.
Do you want me to comment on that, Councilor Martinez?
Yeah, yes, sir, I do, please.
Okay, sure. And I'm aware that this has been an issue in the city, and I think all I can say is that it's my understanding that the city clerk's office has been working very diligently to clear the backlog, so to speak, of adopted ordinances that have yet to be codified. And I know that was a big effort because I think it was a large backlog. But I believe, and I haven't checked in on this in quite some time, that some great progress was made, and that things have been codified that were sitting around. So I do understand your concern, but I do think the city administration is aware of it and has been working to remedy the problem.
I feel like, I understand when we've fallen behind on something and then we have to play catch up, and I get that. But at the same time that you're playing catch up, I still don't think that excuses you from staying with the course and doing what we're supposed to be doing. So I just really hope that the actions of this governing body are being taken to heart and being put into law in the codified book the way that they're supposed to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Manny Martinez or Councilor Ritchie, any questions regarding this?
No, sir.
Councilor Ritchie?
No, sir.
All righty, so this is just unfortunately a discussion item. However, I would ask that we put it on our next public safety actually, we had stated, let's go ahead and move this to full council. Without the motion of this, I'm good with it. So we'll go ahead and advertise as needed and as need be, and just send it straight to full council. It does not need to come back to public safety.
You're going to full council with the addition of any future, is that correct?
As presented.
Okay.
And again, we're not taking any action on it. We just wanted to clarify with the attorney. We're okay with getting up to par and catching up to par with what we need to. So
I think it's a good idea also. Thank you.
So let's just go ahead and send it straight to full council. All righty. Next item on our agenda, and if you give me just 1 second so I can discern all my chicken scratch here. Thank you, Jonas. We appreciate you.
Should be aye.
Thank you, Chairman Torres. You all have
Um,
a good night.
Thank you.
Good night, Jonas.
Wait, we need you still. I'm just kidding. Let's go ahead and move on to letter I. This is a discussion of overflow of refuse on commercial property presented by City Code Enforcement Officer Justina Trujillo. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Chair. So what we have here, that what we're looking at is, we've been having a situation with a lot of the commercial properties and their trash bins. We have a lot of, we've got a situation also going on with North Central Solid Waste. Mr. City Manager has been in contact with Peter Fuller from North Central Solid Waste, and they've been discussing what kind of things we can do to prevent the trash flow from overflowing, as well as public dumping, public littering in the bins. I've been trying to get a hold of a couple of municipalities to try and figure out what else we can do. Santa Fe County does have an ordinance regarding public littering and how commercial properties are supposed to be taking care of it. I can take any questions as needed.
Councilor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, we have to look at our ordinance, and have we pulled our ordinance to see if there's requirements regarding locks and for businesses to secure their trash bins?
We have looked at our ordinances, and we don't have anything specific to that.
So that's what, and I know we brought it up last meeting to Public Works, to the chair, to address that. So hopefully that him knowing that that's not in there, that we can address that. And that's going to be one item to help correct it. And then the second is constant follow-up from code enforcement when, throughout the town of enforcing the businesses to keep an eye on their trash and to make sure that it is clean and not to let it get built up like a current business is here in town. So that's the comment I have, is that we do have to change and make sure that we are locking and that businesses take responsibility for that. Okay.
All righty, so I would ask so I did speak to Mayor Pro Tem Dennis Tim, who does chair that committee. We spoke with City Manager, and it was recommended that it be placed under this committee's purview. So I would ask that we bring that ordinance our next Public Safety Committee, so we can dissect it and add whatever verbiage we need to, and whatever locks and so forth, that we can go and advertise and send it to full council. So if we can do that for the next Public Safety Committee meeting.
Will do.
I have a question, sir.
Councilor Manny Martinez, and then Councilor Peggy Sue.
Thank you, sir. The question I just have is, currently, if it's identified who is dumping into some of these businesses' trash, if the person or persons are identified, what is the penalty or fines for such dumping currently on the books?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'll address that. So I believe that we have a littering ordinance of a penalty of $500 if an individual is caught littering. So I believe that would be fall under that category. Does that answer your question, Councilor?
Well, yeah, I guess because the question might be, is it considered littering if they're utilizing a dumpster from someone else, or would that have to be another ordinance that would cover such a penalty for that?
Yes, Councilor Martinez, that's a good question, right? So, in what other category or what other ordinance can we use that would have teeth if an individual is caught by, I guess, law enforcement? And DC Jones, would you maybe, I'll yield the floor to you if there's any other way that we can address this other than just the littering. If one of your officers drives by and sees somebody illegally dumping into a dumpster, as Councilor Martinez stated.
Mr. Chairman, council members, I'm not sure that we can do anything other than if we watch them dump anything that's illegal, All we can do is go to the owner of the dumpster and possibly write a trespass order and ask them not to do it again, which is a misdemeanor citation. And then it's just like somebody trespassing on somebody's property. We can do that, and we can ask who owns the dumpster. We can find out who has the dumpster rights. And then if somebody doesn't have the dumpster rights to dump in there, we can write a trespass order for them. That's basically where we are at this point in time. I think that once we identify and we start looking at the biohazard order, that we can start adding something to that may help us create an ordinance that would keep them from doing this.
See, and
Right now, it's
I
just
get
a
all the
misdemeanor.
all the illegal dumping, or, it's not their dumpster and whatnot, but I think if we just cross the hurdle of having businesses lock their trashes,
Right.
you'll rid that whole portion. Granted, some businesses may not want to lock them, and, well, granted, that falls on them. But I think once we cross that hurdle of locks, city manager?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you. So I'll just relay, I did invite Mr. Peter Fuller to this committee because I wanted North Central to have a voice during this committee because we were going to be talking about North, refuge. Unfortunately, he was not able to attend. He did send me a pretty detailed email in regards to this. So commercial business can request by North Central to have these locks and rods added to their dumpsters, but they're understaffed. They only have one certified welder to come out and physically do this to their dumpsters. Now they can ask and maybe subcontract that out to get these done. But the issue that we're having as well is a lot of these businesses have their dumpsters within a concrete barrier. And even though the dumpster is closed, they still just dump over the barrier and all around the dumpster. So locking it just prevents from being inside the dumpster, but it doesn't prevent it from around the area. And North Central employees are not required to offload of their vehicles and pick up the trash around the dumpster.
Thank you. Councilors?
Thank you, CM. So you're touching on something that I feel is very important. When you pass by a business bin and the bin is not even full, but there's trash all the way around that bin, there's no way that trash is getting to the dump because the truck is going to come with a truck and they're going to pick up the whole bin and they're going to toss that bin over and they're going to throw that. And whatever's in that area is just going to stay in that area. And that's what's happened. And to me, they're littering. Even though it's on their property or whatever, they're still littering. So I feel like those are the things that we got to tighten up, the illegal dumping. And I feel like the illegal dumping can be solidified with the locking of the bins. So I think those two things go hand in hand, but I do believe that we really need to work on two things. One, when a business doesn't really take care of the bin area themselves, the city has the authority to go over there and cite them and say, you know what, you got 30 days to clean that bin up. If not, you're going to be cited for littering. So that is an issue. But the other issue that I have deals with possibility of North Central looking at the size of bin possibly for these different businesses, because it seems like the same bins are always overrun, overfilled, and overthrown. And I feel like it's possible that they just don't have enough in their bin, enough space to maintain a week's worth of their own trash. I'm not sure that's the case, but maybe that is part of it. I don't know. Maybe North Central could possibly look at doing some type of an audit through our community and see if the same bins are full all the time, or if they need a bigger bin, or what's going on with that.
And Councilor, I see your hand up, but I just want to add that, I think our code enforcement officer is doing a great job. And, if dumpsters are full and it's just coming down to them dumping over the walls, et cetera, I think she's got it in her purview that, we want that taken care of. Councilor Ritchie, and then I'll yield the floor to City Manager.
Two things. Regarding the ordinance that we look at, we have to put teeth into the businesses. It's their responsibility. So even though it's locked and people just throw over, it's their responsibility. And our code enforcement is written them up that they understand there could be some penalties. The second is regarding, not that a larger dump, it is a larger bin, it is more often, dumping more often. We can dump every day if we have to, if the business, but the business has to authorize that. And for example, the one business that we're talking about, if they need to be dumped, right now it's weekly, but they can be dumped almost every day if that's what their business requires. So it is North Central going out to those businesses that are having issues and getting authorization to dump whatever it takes to keep it clean. And so it is some, we need some work with North Central to go out there and work with the businesses to ensure that they're getting picked up as much as they need.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and I'll just echo with Councilor Ritchie. That is correct. It's absolutely, the bottom line, it's the business's responsibility on the control of their trash. In talking with North Central, with specifically with these Dollar General stores, these Dollar Trees, they're run by larger corporations. When we talk to the in-house manager, their hands are tied. They see they need permission from upper regional managers to declare and request with North Central for additional trash pickups to keep up with the trash flow. And that's the main thing that we're having, the lack of communication. So if we do cite them, if we have Ms. Trujillo out there on a consistent basis, it's ultimately the business's responsibility. And if they see that their overflow and the once a week pickup is not sufficient, they need to request with North Central more frequent pickups. Just a good example, as I was Community Services Director, we have trash bins at the senior center at our parks behind City Hall. It was up to me as a city oversight of that to request, hey, I need this, it's overfilling, it's over that. So I'd call them to come and pick up, whether it was an additional charge, so be it, but it was, as a city, having requested this, it was our responsibility to make sure that they were notified to add on top of their regular pickup.
And to add to that, I'm sure you'll get corporate's attention if they start receiving fines and so forth. So
that was what I was gonna say, is that I really believe that it's important when we redo this to think about adding something in there. I wish Jonas was still on the line, concerning adding a service fee to their water bill that states that the city of Espanola was summoned for a special pickup because it was an overfill on the trash, so that the city is not encumbering the cost of that. And North Central also, in the constituency from the area, Espanola and the greater area, are not eating the cost of that pickup. Right. To me, these are perpetual situations, because it seems like these companies that are not from here, that seem like there's a disconnect from corporate to the local, and it seems like their management is probably overwhelmed, is what way I'm looking at it, because it doesn't seem like they've been able to ever clean it up. It seems like it's been a mess from very close to day one, and it continues to be that mess. And it's not acceptable to me. These things are identifying our community, and we have to get strong and do what we need to do to improve this. I appreciate what you're doing, Ms. Trujillo. I think you're doing an incredible job. I just want to give you more tools to be able to do a better job.
Alrighty.
Mr. Chair, just really quick, chiming in, and and thank you for Councilor Ritchie talked to me this afternoon, brought to me a very urging situation happening at the Dollar General near State Road 30 and the Santa Clara Bridge Road. What we're going to do is we contacted North Central Solid Waste. They're going to be delivering a 30-yard roll-off dumpster tomorrow morning. We're going to have a city employee with a tractor to load all that trash on there, but we will be sending the Dollar General an invoice for our services. This is not going to be happening. This is going to be a one-time basis, but hopefully we'll get a little bit more teeth to to do this because the overflow of the trash there, it's unacceptable.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Sina, appreciate it. Next item on our agenda is a discussion of speed deterrence on Railroad Avenue. This is something that I wanted on the agenda to bring forth to city manager to see what we can do, being that, I know we're hitting the wintertime, but we still have football and cheerleading practices here at Valdez Park, and I see a lot of parents crossing the road. For one, there was a painted crosswalk that had some art on it, which is now not visible anymore. Railroad is just, it's a dangerous path, and you see all these parents walking with their kiddos crossing the street because they're parking across by the Head Start. What can we do to get crosswalks and a few speed bumps or something to deter people from speeding through Railroad?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, no, absolutely, I do agree. That's, I take that road on my daily commute. You know, it's unfortunate that me in my position, I do obey the speed limit. And people pass me, you know, going way above the speed limit. You know, but I do see where the crosswalks are faded. I can get with the streets department to address that. They do have the equipment and the in-house services to do that.
And Railroad used to have speed bumps, and thank you.
Chairman,
Yes, sir, Councilor Martinez.
on that discussion for that area, because that is a residential area, would we be able to put double speed fines in that such area if a person is caught speeding?
We see Deputy Chief shaking his head, so yes.
That could be a deterrent too, just the fact that it's a double speeded or double fined area.
Right, but, you know, granted, they have to be caught doing it, right? So,
Yeah.
That would be a deterrent.
but I think an alignment on your vehicle would be more of a deterrent than, yeah, we can just address that, and that'd be great, and if you can just present before the committee the next go-around, let us know what the progress is. Thank you, sir. All righty. Next up on our agenda is department reports. First up is Chief Ron Padilla. And Chief, you'll present, right? Because I heard you weren't going to be here, but you're here. And, you know, Wick was studying his packet very hard. And
yeah, he was studying for sure.
so before we begin, councilors, any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the stats for the fire department? I see nothing, so Chief, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, members of the Public Safety Committee, just real quick on stats that we implemented a going electronic with our units, computers in our units. So as you can see, there's 302 calls for that month. When we were doing them by hand with a okay.
Sorry, Chief.
No, it's okay. If we were getting the call, doing them by hand, and if calls were stacking behind that, we weren't getting real-time information. So what would happen is our units were going out to calls, they were still on calls, and that call that wasn't attended to or was delayed wasn't given to us real time, or it wasn't documented. Now every call is documented. So it's going to show us how many calls we're missing. We are transporting more and more every day, EMS, and it seems that is falling on us from Espanola Hospital. Just some information, okay? So we're going to average way more calls coming up this year than we did last year. And it's going to give us real, true numbers, okay? Mr. Chair, members of the committee, October 15th, we will be interviewing for the assistant chief and the inspector. So after that date, we will figure out who we are gonna hire and, move on from there. State Fire Marshal grant was submitted on September 10th for 400,000 to do a demolition, full reconstruction of La Jolla. Yes, sir.
No, well, I gotta be recognized by the chair, so I just,
Counselor
being
Ritchie.
in line.
Chair.
Counselor Ritchie, sir.
Oh, no, continue on with your report, I just,
Okay.
once you,
400,000 grant we submitted for the demolition, full reconstruction. That building is so out of date, and it's time for, it was built in 1961 for $20,000. We've put Band-Aids on it, and it's time to rebuild it and get better quarters. I gotta give it to my staff. Those are substandard quarters they're living in. The bedrooms are too hot, the day room is too cold, and they went many days without air conditioning this summer with no complaints. Thank you, guys. We've been working with JROTC at the high school with some training to them, and they're going to assist us with natural disasters and bigger emergency incidents. That seems to be working out. We used them this Tuesday to give the booster shot out, and they were directing people in and out, and it worked out very well. We're going to be hosting, been some training issues at the State Fire Academy. We're going to be hosting a Fire Inspector 1 training event here in Espanola. We're having an instructor coming for the inspector training. This is going to be offered to the community, volunteer community as well. Our EMS Special Vehicle Project grant that was awarded to us, the purchase order has been submitted to Siddons Martin, but due to trying to get chassis, it's going to be about 11 months before we get that truck. With that being said, we are trying to shorten down our fleet, and we have an old truck that we received back in 2006, process of transferring that over to the Pueblo of Isleta. I did put it out through MS Region 3 if anybody else wanted that unit. Nobody took that offer, and Isleta did. So it's better than it just sitting around over here. It's an old truck, but it is in good shape. The AFF is the International Association of Firefighters, Local 4339. They're doing their, we're doing their annual fundraiser for T-shirts and breast cancer awareness. So if you need a T-shirt, let Alex Suazo know. There's one right there. And Toby Morphine designed the shirt. One last thing is we have met with with Jeremy Maestas. We are working with him and Streets General Services. We will be starting cleanup on that wood pile on the south side of Lucero Center. We will be separating it up and chipping some of it, and then we'll be burning some of it to get that all cleaned up. We can't move it, so we've decided that's what we're gonna do with that. So, any questions?
Counselors, Counselor Ritchie.
I've asked this before, and I hope the answer has changed. Are we able to bill for the transporting when we're transporting for the hospital, or are we able to bill?
No, we are not.
So the answer hasn't changed.
The answer hasn't changed.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, again, I'm gonna state this again. And if you'd like to stop by my office, and I can point out and show you documents of we in the fire department are way understaffed. Way, way understaffed. In the way of this is the staffing, this is an emergency at this point. I cannot say it enough. I'll say it every time I'm up here. This staffing issue is an emergency.
And understand that, we totally understand that. How can we, here's an example of transporting and we're not billing, so we're spending our money for another agency or service. How do we get to bill that? How can we bill, which would help us in the staffing?
Well, first of all, I don't hate to say this, we need the staffing, period. It just needs to happen,
I understand that.
okay? With that being said, is that if we had more staffing, I can have this city has been determined that we need 2 engine companies in this city and 1 ladder company to flow 3,500 gallons a minute. That's just for fire suppression. We're not talking running EMS calls. That's just fire suppression. I understand that we can't do that right away. But if we had a truck that just ran EMS and we got we petitioned the PRC for that, I would need just for an EMS truck, I would need an additional 6 people. And just specifically, they would fight fires, of course, but then we would ask for a portion of their tariff and be able to bill for that.
And I think where Councilor Rich is coming from is, from what we see here is fires are 6, rescue and emergency medical services 245 calls.
Correct.
So, you know, that's where we're at. Well, if we're spending a majority of our time with rescue and emergency medical services, wish we could bill for it.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. But as the tariff belongs to Presbyterian Hospital, and this has happened since I started, when we started here. What happened is we became a fire department. Then we became an emergency services. They're saying that here's the fire department. When EMS isn't available, who do they send? They send us, right? Because that's what we do. So it falls back on us. We can ask for a partial tariff and see if we can bill with that, but I'm so short-staffed as it is for fires, if we're gonna be, it's a catch-22 on that. I mean, I can get you those answers, Councilor Ritchie, Mr. Chair, on what it would take to do that, and what it would take for our fire department to become, yes.
Supplement salaries, et cetera. Councilor Peggy Sue Martinez?
So my concern is what he just said, like he's saying basically that he's short-staffed, but if you're running 200 and some calls, you're already utilizing the staff that you have. So if you are, then I think we need to look at ways to get compensated for that. I can't agree more. So I'd like to have that answered at our next meeting, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, also remember those are 240 some odd calls that we respond as EMS. That's not how many we transport, okay? So the national average for fire and EMS calls is 70% EMS and the rest is fire, some sort of fire.
So what's our average, not national?
It's about that. It's totally about that.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I have not. No. I'm the sole administrator right now, I'm paying my bills myself. The fire department does not have an admin. Every other department within the city has an admin. Fire with 23 years has not had an admin. I'm paying the bills, I'm running calls, I'm trying to do it all. So hopefully now that the assistant chief is coming on and the inspector is coming on, they can take some of that from me, and I can start doing other things within the fire department.
Okay, so let me rephrase the question. Of those 19 calls, are there entities that have already had the calls per month allowed?
Oh, I'm
free?
sure, yes,
There are, so
Yes.
we passed the ordinance, but we haven't billed.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, anything else, counselors? Alrighty, thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Next, Martinez presents. Do you have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the stats for the municipal court? I see no hands up here in the chambers. Counselor Manny Martinez?
No questions here, sir.
Alrighty, thank you. Judge, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. If there are no questions, then I can just briefly go on, we can pass on that.
Sure.
Unless there are questions. But I do have to address what I was speaking about earlier because it's going to go before the council. And I think it's important that you become aware of it. This is the second ordinance that we're proposing for the council, and this is the updated penalty assessment schedule. It is in your packet, and I want to just bring it to your attention so when it does go before the council, that you're aware that it was presented here, sir.
Great. Thank you, sir. Counselors?
I just want to ask if there's anything that has concerns with at all within the judiciary branch, and if your staff has been filled. You said you hired a graffiti person. You did get the third clerk that you had been absent. So right now, you're up to par with all your whole staff and those types of issues, Mr. Martinez?
Yes, ma'am, we are. Now, again, we don't get the third clerk until 2 weeks from now, or a little less than 2 weeks. You have to give 2 weeks' notice. And then again, it'll take 2 to 3 weeks to train her. But once that's done, we will be fully staffed. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Thank you and your staff for all your hard work, Mr. Martinez.
Yes, ma'am, and thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have a good evening. Next up on the agenda is Planning and Land Use Report presented by Code Enforcement Justina Trujillo. Before she goes, counselors, any questions, comments, concerns regarding stats for planning and land use?
Comment from me, just saying thank you for your attention to the concerns of this committee and to the concerns of the city council. I feel like you're listening to what we're talking about and highlighting in our meetings with what's happening around the community. The only real concern that I have right now that I haven't heard a whole lot about, but I know that you probably went to address it, was the tire situation at that old Hunter building, because I did notice that they moved a pile of tires from being out in the corner to being in a trailer. So I'm just curious about how long we let that trailer sit there with all those tires and all that other stuff, and then what we're doing with their parking lot as far as all the junk cars that they have out there and stuff. So if you could touch base on that, please, and then just go ahead and do your presentation. Thank you.
So Councilor Martinez, I issued a violation to them about a week ago, so they still have another week before possibly transporting the tires. I know in the back of their lot, they also had a lot of pallets on the floor, couches, just random objects out. So I got them for a nuisance notice. So I will be checking that one out this week on Friday. The hard part, and me and Angelica are still working to see if they have their business license. It expired I think in 2019, so that was another thing that they had to do. That was also issued on the notice. So their second notice is coming up, so we're keeping an eye on it.
Thank you so much for paying attention to that situation. Like I said, I could tell that you had been out there because I did see them move the mess a little bit, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
Of course.
Alrighty. Councilors, any other questions, comments, or concerns? I don't hear none or see none, so you're welcome to proceed.
Good evening, everybody.
Have a good evening. Thank you. All righty. Next up on the agenda is Project Race report, and this is presented by Project Manager Cynthia Lenteni. I hope I said that right. Via Zoom, correct. Before she goes ahead and presents, and let me make sure she's on first. Is she on? Oh, is Veronica presenting? Who is with us via Zoom from Project Race?
Good evening, chair members of the community. It's Veronica.
Alrighty, hey Veronica. So questions, comments, or concerns, committee members for Project Race regarding stats and so forth?
No, sir.
Just want to know how things are going with them, dealing with getting into the schools and stuff like that.
All right, Ms. Veronica, the floor is yours.
Getting into schools based on Bobbin's life skills training or Red Ribbon?
Life skills, like normally what you guys were doing when you were actively in the schools, and then I know that COVID sort of put the brakes on everything there, so I just want an update as to where we're at with all of that.
So yesterday I went to the school. They don't have approval just yet for teaching of life skills right now in the school. I still need to finish fingerprinting and the background check with them before they issue a badge. That's going to be all of due to Red Ribbon. We did get in with the junior high to do the presentation with the DEA in person along with National Guard.
What date is that?
October 25th at 1.
That's awesome. That's great news, because I didn't think we were going to be allowed in any schools this year. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilors, anything else?
Just, you know, thanks for what they're doing. I know I know COVID did put a break on them, so thank you guys.
All right, Ms.
Thank
Veronica,
you.
you can present whatever else you'd like to present.
I think we're pretty much done. Like I said, we were lucky enough to get into the junior high, high school, not so much just because of the whole COVID situation, but we did speak with the principal from junior high, and we are going to utilize the field so that National Guard can bring in their chopper as well to present.
Nice.
So the presentation will be outdoors?
It is at the football field.
Nice. I think that's safer.
All righty, great. Thank you, Ms. Veronica. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. She's still with us? All righty. Next up on the agenda is the police department. We have with us Deputy Chief. The floor is yours, sir.
Honorable Chair, members of the committee, it's a pleasure to be here and present to you the stats for the Espanola Police Department. If you have any questions, I'll stand for any questions. One of the things I'd like you to turn to, though, is on page 2 of our stats, and we look at the overdose. Our officers last month in the month of August, did 12 overdoses, and they were able to save 7 of those lives, and we worked hand in hand with the fire department to make this happen. We couldn't do that if it wasn't for the fire department. And one of the things that I'm going to throw in with that is the fact that the fire department is probably more visible than the police department is, because whenever they have that big fire truck driving around the street, everybody sees it. And it's one of the things that happens, and when they show up in one of our scenes, it does make a big difference on how we're able to get things done and make things happen, because the fire department is very professional in what they do and how they do it. But you don't have the stats yet for the month of September, but we had 17 overdoses in 17, and most of these are fentanyl overdoses. And this month already, we've had 7 overdoses. And our officers are running with Narcan and doing all they can to take care of the people that are in stress and having problems. And I don't see this getting any better within the city of Espanola during the winter months as it starts coming in and we start looking at things. I just want to let you know that our police department's working hard. Today, with the fire department, we did coffee with a first responder at Starbucks. We had a great time. I got to work the drive-up window, and I'm sure they lost money because I was giving stuff away that just handing it out the door. We had a great time. We were doing some good.
Let us know when you're there again, sir.
I will. I'll let you know. But it was a lot of fun. Pretty stressful for everybody. The other thing we want to do is that one of the great things that we've been able to do is we brought license plate readers, and because of this committee and the city council, we were able to purchase those 9 license plate readers. They've been installed and they will be operational on Friday. And we're pretty jazzed about having the license plate readers here. And we're going to be able to work in conjunction with Pewaukee and Santa Fe on the license plate readers as soon as we get this established and get them up and running. So I'm hoping that in a couple of weeks that we can take members of the Safety Council and go and get a view of what we're doing with the license plate readers, how they work, and what their capabilities are for our future.
Councilor Ritchie?
This is the million-dollar question, and regarding the drugs, the fentanyl, and just be straight out, what are we doing? What can we do? What is, and I know we have to be careful if there's plans already out there. Do we have anything in the pipeline working on trying to reduce the flow into our community? Is there anything we're able to do?
There are a lot of things that are going on right now.
Yeah.
Because of this committee, we've been very, very fortunate in how we've been able to strategically place a couple of our officers in what we're doing. We've been able to, and I know that the chief, I throw this out to you, would be glad to give you a briefing on what we're doing and let you know what we've recovered and what things that are happening now. But we're moving forward with some plans, and we've got some issues we got to overcome. But I think that we're moving forward to make this work. We're also working with the Department of Health and HHS, Health and Human Services, and we're doing Narcan classes for people in northern New Mexico. We're doing all we can to stem, the toll of the people taking that have taken fentanyl. But it's coming into the state of New Mexico. There's not a lot that we can do about it from the outside the city limits of Espanola, but we're doing all we can to stem the tide here in Espanola.
Councilor Manny Martinez?
Thank you, sir. You mentioned, of course, the 12 overdoses, 17 overdoses, and I believe 6. And mentioned, of course, the fentanyl being right now, it seems to be that is the main problem now as compared to heroin. Would you state that as a fact that that's more of the issue now when it comes to what drugs are coming through or people are overdosing on? Or what could you say the percentage is as compared to what heroin was as far as what's been affecting our community?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Martinez, it's talking to the individuals who have been issued Narcan and we're bringing them out. It's the fact that they were on fentanyl, and it's a much more potent drug than what they're used to, and they did not know that it was fentanyl. They were either thinking it was oxycodone or something else, and that's the issue that we've got. But all the ones, the Sergeant Zach Wright and Darren Cruz saved 3 people this month already, and all 3 of those were, when they came about, were because of fentanyl. And I don't know how else to say it. It's a epidemic that we have in the state and in our community.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Councilor Peggy Sue Martinez?
I'm going to get away a little bit from the fentanyl situation. I have a couple of questions. First of all, I know that we have an officer assigned to Region 3. Can you give me a little update on how that's working out for the city of Espanola? with.
Chairman Salazar Torres, honorable members of this committee, and Council Member Peggy Sue Martinez, it's working very well for us. I'd be glad to sit down with you if you will come to the office so we could talk about things that have happened and what we're doing. Absolutely. But it's a positive thing for the city of Espanola.
Good. That's good to hear. I also would like an update on the DOT grants, on the traffic grants that the city of Espanola has. Do you know where we're at with that as far as balances, or what have we encumbered, or what's going on with that?
No, ma'am, I do not.
You do not. Okay. Could you find that information and email me, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
All righty. Counselors, any other questions, comments, concerns for the PD?
Thank you.
What a pleasure it is to speak to you all. Thank you all very much for what you do. And we work hand in hand with the fire department.
Thank both departments for everything they do for our community and keeping us safe, okay?
Thank you. We appreciate you. Counselors, next item on our agenda is our next meeting, tentatively scheduled for November 3rd. Any objections? Is the day after elections. So would you like to push the meeting, or are we okay with? I'm sorry? Okay, we're good for November the 3rd. Councilor Manny Martinez, you good?
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
All righty, everybody have a good night. We've reached the end of our agenda. Be safe.
Yes. You guys have a great evening.
Recording stopped.